Welcome to this webinar, which we are calling Cold Calling and Lead Generation. Now, this is a really hot topic right now, as a lot of organizations, startups through to well-established businesses are really clamoring for attention in their customers or their prospects' eyes. And they're also trying to figure out actually how to amalgamate all of the various touch points that the organization or the business has with its customers. So what I'm going to cover as we go through this session today are some things that will potentially quite challenge the way that you have maybe, I guess, kind of thought about cold calling and lead generation in the past. I mean, there are a lot of kind of preset ways of kind of gaining customers' attention, starting those interactions, positioning yourself as a salesperson potentially, or as a marketer, and very much looking at this from the perspective of we have something to sell. Now, I'm going to challenge that is no longer really fit for purpose. So where we're going to go with this conversation is that I'm going to present to you some evidence and hopefully some tangible things that you can begin to think about to maybe restructure how you make connections, particularly a more cold connection. And in fact, I'm even going to challenge that cold calling itself is a very inappropriate way of beginning the customer relationships that you have or that you wish to have. So the big question here that we're looking to face here and really looking to answer is, how can marketers, business developers, account managers and salespeople become more effective in cold calling and lead generation? So there's my big question. There's our starting point. And I'm going to give the answer to start with, and then we're going to kind of reverse engineer back from the end point, and we're going to see whether or not this really makes sense. Because I would challenge that by working together strategically and tactically, all of the above people can integrate their efforts pointing towards a common goal. In other words, they can basically align themselves, and or you can align with them if you're all pointing in the same direction. It's a little bit like setting the business sat-nav, the business satellite navigation in your automobile, in your car, and saying, okay, that's where we're headed. So that is the common goal. And now we can all kind of, take various journeys, and we can take, the customer or the marketing campaign or activity, or go to an event or do some social activity. But ultimately, it's all pointing in the same direction. And often, as we find when we start to look at the remit, the job description, the strategy, the tactics, and the things that we do as salespeople and as account managers and as business developers and as marketers, and what we see is actually, for most of us, they are wildly different. And that is the harsh reality that we're playing with here. So what I want to do is really explore with you how a business, or how businesses and potentially your business, can build a customer base, create new leads, at the same time as ensuring that in the longer term, the reputation of your brand and the kind of the quality of the conversations, the engagement, and the way that your brand and your business and your products and your services and your people are perceived, that is all preserved and even enhanced by these customer interactions. In other words, not just going out there looking to sell and market products and services on your terms. This is all about turning the attention through probably 180 degrees and looking back in on your organization or your business and the things that you kind of do from the customer's perspective. Okay, so this is getting to the real heart of high quality sales and business development, and very, very much high quality marketing. Now, of course, that sounds wonderful, doesn't it? You just sort of think, yeah, of course, doing everything from the customer's perspective. Well, why wouldn't we? But a lot of organizations fail to do that. They say that they're doing it. They might have the desire to do it. But actually what happens is they revert back to type. Oh, we've got this new product, so we've got to get out there and sell it. Or, oh, we're a startup, so we've got to just go find customers and sell anything to them to build some relationships. But of course, what that's missing is the perception of value from those customers' perspectives. Because unless they see there's some value coming in terms of the outcomes for their world, then we're not going to be preserving a relationship. We're not going to be enhancing the long-term value of that relationship. So that's really our starting point. It is all about, potentially some quick wins, cold calling, lead generation, business development, sales and marketing can create quick wins in the moment. But it's also about balancing those quick wins with a long-term strategy so we can build the brand reputation. We can build the equity of the product, the service, and the business that we have. So this is really where I'm coming from. It's a long-term game as well as a short-term game. Now, the fundamental problem we have here, okay, and this is going to be something I want to spend a little bit of time trying to pick out kind of what we can do about, is that the perspectives between marketers and salespeople are potentially wildly different. And this has always been the way. I'm in halfway through my 4th decade now in marketing. I've been in marketing for some 35 years. And I would say one of the biggest challenges that I've faced in that time is really being understood by salespeople. Now, I'm not saying that I've got all the answers. I'm not saying they've got all the answers and I misunderstand them. I'm just saying that a lot of the time, in a lot of sectors, a lot of industries, a lot of businesses, marketers are from Venus and salespeople are from Mars. And that's how it feels from both sides of the equation. And I want to get over this. I want to figure out a way with you, hopefully we can talk this through as we go through this session, of breaking down those barriers, creating some kind of bridge between marketing and sales. So the two entities, and if they are different in your business, then we've got to get these two entities together and figure out a way where they're beautifully aligned, where they're telling a consistent story, where there's a real synergy of the output, so that when we get engagement as a customer, we see a consistent profile, we see some consistent conversations, and we see something that just kind of makes sense to us. And that hasn't always been the case. And if you've been in business a long time, you'll know that I'm talking the truth here. So why is it? What is going on here? Well, I want to start from a more kind of strategic perspective to try and kind of uncover really what is actually going on here. So what kind of drives salespeople and what drives marketing people, and why are these things different? Why do we have, as a salesperson, a different perspective to the marketers? And why does marketing, do we have a different perspective to the salespeople? Well, salespeople typically are driven by monthly targets. They've got to hit the numbers. They've got potentially incentives and bonuses that are really front of mind, because this is what the sales director or the sales manager is pushing them to achieve. Yes, they're driven by customer relationships. They're out and about, they're on screen or they're in person, face to face with the customer, and they're building those relationships. And that potentially is quite different to where marketing are coming from, but I'm going to talk about them in a moment. Salespeople are driven by sales plans. They'll sit in the sales meeting knowing that they're contributing to a plan that's driving revenue, it's driving sales, it's driving volume and value share within the sector. And as part of those meetings, they're probably facing some kind of competition from the colleagues around the table. There could be even league tables in the business that says, hey, I'm salesperson number 4 and I want to get up to number 3 in the table. Or they could be struggling at the bottom of the table looking for extra support. So there's a whole load of customer-facing stuff going on. And the drivers there are going to put a certain mindset in the mind of the salesperson. And that's going to be potentially very different, a very different starting place from the marketers. So what are the marketers driven by? Well, potentially long-term brand equity. So they are the custodians of the brand. They want to see long-term value. They want to see that the brand is going to be around tomorrow, not just today. They are probably increasing the digital, maybe social media profiles of the organization. They're looking to, engage digitally, maybe not so much face-to-face as the salespeople who are kind of driving around and, meeting and greeting. From a marketer's perspective, it's all about the profile as an organization or as a team. It's about promotion. It's about campaigns. It's about, potentially increasing customer satisfaction by really engaging with the after sales. So things that happen in terms of customer support. And of course, even just by those examples, you can see that there's a very different perspective, both on the customer, but also on the whole idea of cold calling and lead generation. Just the very fact of a lead is perceived very differently between a salesperson and a marketer. And of course, when it comes to lead generation, the part that a marketer plays in the process that potentially is then followed up by a salesperson is from a different angle. They are looking at this and feeling it and thinking about it differently. And the marketers, again, are tasked with probably the logistics of launches and events and campaigns. So they don't necessarily have the time and or inclination to be out there meeting and greeting customers, building those direct relationships. So you can see very quickly that there is a different perspective on even the starting point of the question that we're actually posing ourselves here. How can we improve cold calling and lead generation? Because if we're coming from different starting points, even the way we interpret that question is different. So there's some challenges to sort and some challenges to resolve here. So what are we going to do about this? Well, first of all, we need to take the perspective of the other person. So if you're in sales, you will know how you think about marketing. Now, you could be in an organization or a business where there is a lovely synergy. There's a lovely alignment between sales and marketing. But in most businesses, that isn't the case, and or there's room for improvement. So what does sales think about marketing? Let's be honest here. Sales thinks that marketing spends all day doing social media posts. Come on, let's get real. That is what sales thinks marketing does. And it's kind of almost like that's all it does. And of course, it also takes forever to design and write sales materials. I'm out there in front of the customer. I'm a salesperson. I need those materials and assets now. And of course, marketers are perceived as sitting in an ivory tower rather than living in the tough real world. And of course, this may or may not be the case, but often that is the perception. So we're not off to a very good start here, are we, in terms of working together? And of course, the next point on the agenda could be that, well, marketing really has no true idea what a customer really is. And actually, ultimately, they're not really accountable for business growth, because that's me as a salesperson. I'm the only one really who can drive the relationship, which results in the purchase, which results in the revenue, which drives the business forward. So here I am trying to do my best in front of the customer. And all marketing is doing is they're in the background, not really adding too much value. Now, I know I'm playing devil's advocate here, and I'm doing this on purpose because I'm kind of extending, although you may say, well, actually, you're not, Neil. That is how we think of marketers. But I'm just trying to sort of stretch the reality here to get you to think about there is a viewpoint, and it may or may not be justified, but it is potentially a viewpoint. We need to get over this. So what is the converse? What does marketing think about sales? And again, we're trying to keep this quite high level before we get into the tactical, what can we do about it? So from a strategic perspective, marketing probably thinks that sales, just is out there doing deals to hit targets, to hit the numbers, whatever the cost. And to me, that doesn't sound a particularly positive or a particularly, valuable thing to be doing. But whether that's the reality or not, that is potentially what marketing thinks a salesperson does. And they'll also be probably thinking, marketing, we always are constantly asked by sales for random things for a single customer. We've got this lovely strategy that we agreed in the meeting at the beginning of the quarter, and here's salesperson X asking me for this and asking me for that. It's just a distraction. It's just not what we've agreed. I'm going to be the barrier now. I'm going to say no. And of course, as soon as I say no, then I'm actually not getting in. I'm getting in the way of doing the deal. I'm getting in the way of the lead generation. And of course, marketing also thinks that sales fails to understand the true value of digital marketing. They think all we do is social media posts. They think we're just blogging for the sake of it. Actually, what we're trying to do is actually create some awareness. We're trying to create an environment in the marketplace where people, when the salesperson goes into that particular account or picks up the phone for the first time, the potential customer or the prospect actually knows who we are. So actually what we're doing in digital is kind of just shaping up an initial awareness to give you a chance as a salesperson to actually get out there and do something, do your job. But actually they probably fail to understand, and that's what we're doing. And they also potentially think that salespeople are a bit of a law unto themselves, and that they will buck the trend. They will go outside of the strategy. They will bend the rules a little bit to get the sale. And whether they do or don't is irrelevant, because marketers often think that's what salespeople are doing. And they also, and I do have to say, I have seen a lot of examples of here that because of the nature of incentivization and also the nature of the way budgets and plans are created in sales teams, is that they're out there selling products instead of potentially the value of a solution sell. In other words, it is far easier to hit your numbers generally if you've got a short-term deadline to hit the numbers. It's far easier to just get a few product sales than it is to do the slow, longer burn of selling a longer-term commitment to a solution. So why would a salesperson do that when they can hit the numbers, get the pat on the back, get the bonus in a way that doesn't necessarily meet what marketing thinks they should be doing? Almost like, why would they do that? So what we're facing here is a little bit of a dilemma. We've got a starting point that is quite different, but we've also got two sides of an equation that doesn't necessarily add up, but it could. Okay, so I've got some ideas in the little checklist that I want to share with you that hopefully will begin to build some bridges between sales and marketing that will enhance this whole idea of having to make cold calls as a salesperson, because you don't, because marketing can help you make those warm calls because they'll already have preempted who you want to talk to, where you want to go and when, and warmed up that environment. So when you do make that call, when you do make that engagement or that visit, the customer or the prospect is already in the mindset to be receptive to you. So that's what we want to do, is kind of create that bridge between marketing and sales. And one of the things we're going to think about here is to establish one cohesive strategy. Let's just think about, what are we both, as marketing and as sales, what are we both trying to achieve? Let's see if we can work together and create a strategy, so a longer term view that is a win-win. So what are we actually trying as a collective here to help the business do? So what is our overarching goal here as a business? Some smart objectives in place. And then could we, as a result of that, align our marketing and our sales targets on a monthly basis together to work together in harmony, in kind of almost hand in hand, to achieve those objectives? Could we align our monthly targets? So no longer do we have a sales target, but we have potentially a growth target. Could we forget the digital targets and actually say, no, we've got a growth target of which digital plays a part and supports the growth target? And I'll show you kind of how that might play out in a moment. So could we agree some customer feedback priorities? In other words, every single connection we have with a customer, be it a new prospect or a really loyal existing customer, any feedback that we get, can we feed that into some kind of system? I mean, if you've got a customer relationship management system or some kind of marketing database, you might already have this in place. But most of us don't do that. Most of us don't have a place where we can feed back every single piece of feedback into a system where sales and marketing can draw from as we present and prepare plans and propositions and messages and assets and, engagement opportunities. So it's consistent with what we know that particular customer wants and needs to solve problems. And if we had it all in one place, rather than sales having their records and marketing have their system, if we had it all in one place, then we'd be joining this thing up. Because then what we could do, we'd be able to manage one integrated customer experience or customer journey. And we'd know in that journey, and I'm going to share with you the 3 points in a minute of the customer journey to see whether this would resonate for you. So if we're building awareness, the customer gets a consistent story through the marketing, through the sales engagement, and is kind of very, very clear on the value they get, the outcomes that are going to happen if they do engage with us, but also what's going to happen next. And the salesperson knows that they're fully supported by the marketers, and the marketers know that the salespeople are doing the things that are supporting the customer at the right place at the right time. So one integrated customer journey plotted out on the customer's behalf, using the right kind of channels, the right points in time, the right messages, the right assets, digitally and physically. It just is a joined up experience. That's what we're after here. And of course, that driven by one set of really smart objectives. In other words, how many people are we going to engage with in our joined up plan in the next month? And how many calls will that result in? And what does that mean? Because if we can convert 10 of those calls, or 10% of those calls rather, into actual fee-paying business, then well, have we hit those numbers, those targets that we wanted? And everybody having sight of those numbers and those smart objectives means that you know your role in the process. You know what you need to be doing to contribute to this one integrated customer journey. So the salespeople aren't just going out there selling. The marketers aren't just in digital publishing stuff. Everything is joined together. And maybe then also to really build this bridge, really get this commonality of cause, this real kind of consensus of purpose, if we were to rename the team to perhaps something like the business growth team, so rather than saying the sales team and the marketing team, let's combine this thing and call it the business growth team and put the customer at the center of this, plot this integrated customer journey. And that's our starting point. And then from there, the salespeople can go and use their skills to do their part in the process. And the marketers can do likewise. It's joining it up. It's creating those bridges between the two sides of the organization so that from the customer's perspective, everything just simply makes sense. Because then, from a tactical perspective, on a day-to-day basis, those who were marketers can now warm up the marketplace. And those who were salespeople, because now we're calling them business growth people, so everyone in this mix is now the business growth team. So those who were originally called the salespeople can now lead the customer through their journey. It's quite simple, this stuff. Strategically, it is very, very profound for a lot of organizations, but it is, in its essence and at the heart, a very, very simple concept to get your head around, but also to do. So marketers who were marketers are now business developers, business growth professionals who are there to warm up the marketplace. So those who were salespeople can now lead the prospect or the customer through their own personalized but integrated and joined up journey. What's not to like? Because what you can do then, again, thinking a little bit more tactically and a little bit more practically here, is you can work with one set of smart goals. And how would that look? Well, it would be a realistic sales pipeline. So who were marketers and who were salespeople talking together to say, well, what is a realistic number of people that we can actually make aware of this product launch or of this event or of this particular initiative or this campaign? And then from that, what is a realistic number of people who will click the button and engage with us or request a contact call or a visit? And then from that, again, joined up conversation here. What is a realistic number of people who will then request the brochure or will download the guide? And then from there, and to see what we're doing here is we're building a sales pipeline of potential numbers that give us some really smart goals from which we can create some key performance indicators that just make sense to marketers, but also make sense to the salespeople. And from there, we can have one agreed set or one agreed list of priority sectors, messages, and products. One agreed priority list of sectors, messages, and products. So we all know that this month we're focusing on this product with this message in this sector. So the salesperson isn't just going off piste and going off doing their thing, and the marketer isn't just chatting away in social, just trying to get the numbers of likes and engagement up. We're doing this for a reason. And if, in practical terms, we can balance the low-hanging fruit, so today's quick wins, with the longer-term strategic, and we both get it, whether we're sat in what was marketing or what was sales, we both get this perspective. We can get some quick wins today, but we can also protect the brand and the interest in this potential customer for the future. And if we also have one campaign schedule so that we can actually allocate our resources appropriately. And of course, now we're not looking at the sales resources or the marketing resources, we're looking at the business growth team resources. So people, time, and budget can be aligned to this list of sectors, messages, and products so that everything is pointing in the same direction, but on a practical and really sensible basis. And of course, within that, we can then, if we've got this campaign schedule, we can actually then say, well, we can have one lead generation set of guidelines. And what does that mean? Well, it means that we've got a way of approaching a customer that has value, whatever the outcome. And of course, the best case is they're going to buy the product or service, so they're going to engage. The realistic case is, well, they might not be ready quite now, but we're going to gather some data as to when they'll be ready, what the solution is that they really need, and what great outcomes would be. And the very worst case is they're not really interested in us right now, and we don't see that they're going to be interested in us for the future. Well, at least not in the short to medium term, but we've understood a bit more about their business. So those guidelines mean that either we were a salesperson out there on a visit where we don't get a good outcome from the call or from the attempted lead generation, or a marketer. And actually, we did some engagement digitally, and actually all we found out was that actually it was going nowhere, but we still found out who was the buyer. We still found out who was the influencer. We still found out who was going to be the end user. So it's all about market intelligence. So that means every single connection through sales and or through marketing leads to some kind of valuable outcome for us that we can then put into this joined up system. So the next time we go back to them, it actually is with a little bit more intelligence before we actually make that connection. So it's starting to become this business growth team, this business growth plan, this business growth opportunity that is truly joined up. Starting to get really interesting in my book here. This is starting to really make some sense. So now we want to get you thinking about the 3 stages of the customer's journey. So we've got this one plan, it's all joined up. We're calling it business growth. We've got a strategy. We've got some smart objectives. We've got a bit of a plan. We've aligned our resources. So we've got one team doing one approach in this coming month for both short-term and longer-term gain. So how's this going to play out then? Well, from the customer's perspective, they are on a journey with you, whether you like it or not, and whether you choreograph it or not. But let's make the assumption that you want to choreograph a journey for them, journey of experience, a journey of touch points, and a journey of ways of actually engaging with them. So let's do the first of the 3 stages of the process. So stage 1 is the awareness stage. Stage 2 is how to help them to convert. And stage 3 is the retention phase. But let's talk about the business growth at the awareness stage to start. So the role of the business growth team now then is to build energy around your value propositions. It isn't about the products and services. Okay, because they can get those down the road. Okay, they can go down the street and look at one of your competitors and they can get the same kind of thing. Even though you sort of think you're great, you're actually not, because you can be replicated. So what we're talking about here is what's the true value that your business brings. So let's build energy around that story. Okay, so this is storytelling. What great outcomes are going to happen for the customer at the early awareness stage? So what kind of things are you telling? What kind of stories are you sharing with your potential prospects? And agree and share across the team, what are the core competencies? In other words, not just your capabilities, the products, the services, the things that you can do, but what are the core competencies? Those things that you do just so well and so better than the competition. Because you need to be sharing those both from a sales, but also from a what was called marketing perspective. And let's focus on social engagement. Let's get into conversations. Let's not just put a cold call into that company or just, post an ad and let's just hope that people see it. Let's begin with the whole idea of social engagement. Let's ask questions. Let's actively listen. Let's make some outbound calls and actually just get the conversation started. Let's not think of these as cold calls. Let's think of these as fact finders. Let's ask questions, but listen to the response. Truly listen to the response, because at the awareness stage, we're starting to give the customer a little bit of a feeling that there's a bit of a faith thing going on. They have faith that actually this is an interesting person or this is an interesting conversation, and I'm curious to find out more. So let's establish the true customer need. Let's not just say, hey, I've got this product, I want to sell it to you. You need this product, Mr. or Mrs. Customer. Let's focus on their outcomes. Let's have the conversations that really inspire, either digitally or face-to-face, an awareness in the customer's mind that, if I talk to this person I'm going to get pretty close to kind of how this organization or how this customer really kind of, or this salesperson really, how they kind of understand my world. They're really kind of actively listening to me. So, this is really quite curious. I don't normally get these kinds of calls. So going in with a kind of an authoritative sort of consultancy style of mindset when you go and make these calls inspires faith and it fosters faith in the way that the early stages of this relationship potentially can build. So the old style of cold calling, I have product X available, it's at a great price, can I interest you in buying it? Those days are so long gone. That was 20, 30 years ago, and it actually, to be fair, very rarely worked then, even then. But nowadays, our customer wants a consultative approach. They want solutions that not only solve their problems, but actually give them great outcomes. So how is this customer's world going to be different from the value propositions you put in there based around the competencies that you have? So there's a lot of thinking needs to go on, and there's a lot of kind of soul searching really as an organization. But of course, now you are one business growth team. You're not a separate sales team, a separate marketing team. You're basically focused now on really understanding those propositions to get into those early conversations. Now, let's just say a little deeper into that relationship building. You're now at a stage with the customer or the prospect where they have an opportunity to commit to you. This is the conversion phase. And what you're doing at this stage in the process of this interaction is you're still building the lead. You're still generating something from this initial call. And what you're doing here is you're kind of sharing value through potentially case studies. So people who are just like the prospect or customer who have had an amazing experience beforehand. Companies who put the case studies or the testimonials right on the homepage of the website before there's any kind of relationship building going on have missed the moment. The time to really share your testimonials and your case studies and those really valuable golden nuggets of stories where, the customer who has gone before them is actually sharing, the really amazing outcomes they've had from engaging with you. That comes just before the customer or this prospect is ready to sign the deal or ready to press, purchase or ready to sign up to the contract. And it's about basically getting into the mindset of the customer that they are looking to form trust, a trusting relationship with you. And of course, what we're doing here at this stage is potentially answering any barriers to closing the sale, closing the deal, kind of having those final conversations that, we can solve that. And here's evidence why. And so what you're looking to do is kind of refine and update assets based on the prospect's feedback. In other words, you're not using this one-size-fits-all brochure. You're not just publishing a case study or a testimonial in a way that it's presented to everybody else. Because you've built up this knowledge of the customer through the awareness stage of the customer journey, just prior to this conversion stage, you have enough intelligence within the system and enough intelligence about what's gone on in that conversation to be able to then make almost a bespoke and personalized point in this journey of conversion, this kind of ticking the box, this point of, yes, we're going to give money to you, business X, because we love what you do. It's because this end point of the conversion stage has been personalized. So you've customized this stage of the journey in such a way that you can show actively you've been listening through every conversation, through every social engagement. And so from the customer's perspective, everything has got closer and closer and closer to what they really truly need. And so you are simply not selling what you wanted to sell, but you're giving them reasons to buy. Okay, so there's a fundamental shift here in this business growth approach from selling to somebody to giving them reasons to buy. And of course, because you've built this really profoundly solid relationship now, where else would they go? where else would they feel obliged to go but you? Because, well, why wouldn't I? Because I trust you now. You've listened to me. You've reshaped everything in this journey more and more. As I've gone deeper into the journey, it's become more and more about me. You've really understood me, and I can tell that because you've played back all this stuff to me in a language I understand. You've translated all of your stuff into my world. My goodness, I love you, Mr. Salesperson or Mrs. Salesperson, and I love you, marketing team, as was, because I can see you're working together. You're so joined up. I get the right things at the right time. Yes, I'm going to convert. So no longer will I be now a prospect. I am now a customer. And then, as the business growth team, you've got a lot of fun to be had, because this is where the real revenue starts to come in. And this is where future lead generation can be stimulated. And the third phase of the customer's journey, first phase was awareness, second phase was conversion that I just talked about. The third phase is the retention stage. And this is where the real fun happens. So this retention phase is you retaining that sale, retaining the customer, retaining their loyalty, focusing on inspiring advocacy. You want them to tell everybody else that they know about the amazing value that you've added. It wasn't about the product or service. Remember, they can get that down the street. This is about the value of the relationship. So just after that conversion, when it's really warm, if not hot in their mind, at the value that you've added, this is the point of data capture. Okay, so immediately post-sale, what you need to be doing is grabbing every single little piece of data that you can that's going to serve you and that customer in the relationship going forward. So you connect on LinkedIn, you get the details of everyone else in the business who needs to be engaged with, if that is appropriate. You understand from them how initially they've used your product or service and kind of what was good, what you could improve, and you constantly listen and you feed all of this data back into this one business growth system. And by doing that immediately post-sale, when the customer, because they're now a customer, they're not a prospect any longer, when that customer is ripe for sharing that data. If you wait too long, the moment's gone. And this is why we see organizations who are really, really good at this asking you for a review on Trustpilot or on Google Reviews immediately post-sale. And the reason they're doing this is because the propensity for you to actually then say, yeah, I'll give you a good review, I was happy with that, is much, much higher at that moment than if they follow up in a month or 2 months or even a year's time. And we know that to be true. There's a lot of research that says that. And at the retention stage, once you've got that data, what you have an opportunity here is to truly grow the business, because this is where the fun starts. It is much, and it's always been the way, it's much easier to market, to sell, to develop the relationship with somebody who already knows you. So the cross-selling, the upselling, the back-selling, with this particular customer now is so much easier, capturing the data, listening to how they're using the product or service, and keeping drip feeding that connection with them. So don't just leave them to get on with it and go and find another new prospect. That's a long old journey for lots of customers, for lots of companies. So basically keep the one that you've got in the palm of your hand and keep them sweet. Obsess about what we call the Net Promoter Score. That is a measure. And if you don't know the Net Promoter Score, it's a really good one. Go search it. It's all about customer satisfaction. And this is a real measure as to how likely it is somebody is going to advocate you. Advocacy is a true measure of how well you are doing in your business growth, your selling and your marketing, because it's about customer satisfaction. Only customers who are willing to recommend you are truly, truly satisfied. That's the premise behind Net Promoter Score. So if you think, oh yeah, they're quite happy with us, that's not good enough. Okay, you have to obsess in the retention stage about getting customers absolutely passionate about the relationship they have with you. This is all about professional intimacy. And now you've got the data, now you know what they need, now you've served them with stuff that's so relevant to them. You can retain that if you choose to do so. And by, as a business growth team, joined up, sales and marketing, working together, focused on business growth, one strategy, one plan, one thing to focus on this month, you can focus on inspiring advocacy. Because once that one happy customer tells another 10 people, potentially there's 10 customers in the palm of your hand. So constantly updating the granular level of data that you capture and putting it into this business growth system or this customer relationship management system, even if it is, if you're in a micro business, you might not want to invest in this yet. So even if it is a spreadsheet, but if you've already got a CRM system, making sure that that is constantly and utterly fueled every single day by all of the interactions that you have, and particularly at the retention stage. I always say the big dollars happen at the retention stage. Yes, you can do cold calling, and maybe you're lucky, you just happen to call somebody at the awareness stage and just hit them at the right time when they're looking to buy. Chances are you won't, and you will fail 9 times out of 10, if not more. But at the retention stage, because you've got the data about how and when and why a particular customer purchased, you've now got the data and the evidence to prioritize, to fine tune when you go back to this customer again. And also people just like them, because as we know, if we're building demographic information about certain groups of customers and then we profile them, we know they look and sound and feel and behave very, very similarly. So the customer persona exercise becomes more and more detailed. And we become so well armed in this whole journey. It doesn't become any longer about cold calling. It doesn't become any longer about lead generation. It's all about stimulating the relationship. And so then eventually when we come to the reporting, the sharing, the evaluation of how we're doing in this joined up world where sales and marketing, as was, is now the business growth team, we now can broadly understand some growth metrics that really mean something. So we can be playing everything back against some common strategic goals, but also some sales pipeline goals, because we're all focused on the same customer journey. We can have a balanced scorecard that means that we're actually measuring the use of our resources, our people, our time, and our budgets appropriately. And where it doesn't work, we all know how and can agree how we're going to improve it. So we've got a continuously prioritized improvement plan as well. So we've got a win-win, win-win-win all around. So no longer is sales pointing in one direction, doing one thing, and marketing pointing in the other direction. We're all focused on business growth. We're all focused on one plan, one set of metrics, one set of goals, one campaign every single month. And from the customer's perspective, what is not to like? The relationship is a higher quality. The engagement points are so much more in line with their expectation and what they need, and they just get what we do. So where else would they need to go? Nowhere else. So our numbers start to increase. And of course, in the evaluation of how things are going, in the reporting, in the sharing of the success, let's celebrate and reward as one team. If sales, as was incentivized and there was a bonus structure, well, why not have marketing similarly rewarded with the same kind of bonus structure? Because we're now all part of the business growth team. And of course, by now talking a common language, we all understand what we're doing. We're all joined up, and it really will feel cohesive, both internally and externally. And for me, there's no other way that this could feel better, to be truthful, than the old way of kind of sales and marketing being these two disparate teams with completely different agenda. Now it's all very focused on one goal, one approach, one strategy, and one set of propositions. So there's pure clarity throughout the organization, but also externally. So my 3 top tips before we get into Q&A. I've got a few questions that have just come through on the chat here. So I'm going to answer. I've got 3 questions to answer for you here just briefly at the end of this. But my 3 top tips here are: replace the whole idea of cold calling with warm calling. Replace those cold calls with warm calls. Think about how you can warm up any prospect at that awareness stage in their journey by doing some really joined up growth and development. Don't think of this as sales and marketing differently. Call the sales team and the marketing team the business growth team and combine them together. Remember, we've got one strategy now. We've got one set of goals. So we need one team. Get away from that siloed working of old. Let's operate and behave and interact as one. And remember, tip 3 is that even without a sale, every prospect or customer interaction is a potentially golden moment if you're capturing that data and that intelligence that can feed into a continuous improvement plan, because that is really, really important to everybody going forward, and certainly important to the customer. So that's what I wanted to share with you. And thank you so much for those of you who have sort of added a few little comments in the chat here. So I just want to answer some of these questions that have come through. And I've got 3 that I'm going to select here. If any other questions do crop up in your mind as you start to play with this idea, or maybe talk to your counterparts in the other team, if you're in sales, in marketing, if you're in marketing in sales, then let me know how it goes. Let's connect if we aren't already at Neil Wilkins X on social, and do keep in touch and let me know what you think both of these ideas, but also of how things have kind of shaped up for you. But let me just briefly get into a Q&A here. And the first question I got is should marketing or sales drive the joining together? I guess it really depends on the orientation of the business. I mean, if you're a very sales-driven organization, for marketing to drive it, this might be a bit of an ask, because if you're very sales-driven, the likelihood is that the balance of power is within sales. So it might be that you need a very close ally within the sales team to be able to drive it. But I think it's just, let's begin the conversation, have informal conversations, get a Zoom call or a Teams call, or, if you're actually in the office and you bump into somebody, just set the scene here and just kind of tease out some of these opportunities for being a business growth team, and just kind of test the water, whichever side you're going from. But if there is a kind of a critical sort of weight of balance of influence, if you like, or control within the organization because of its orientation, then it's probably quite likely you need to start there, really. Second question is a business growth director going to be on the board? Well, that's an interesting one. I mean, I guess in the longer term, I mean, if you already have a sales and marketing director and or sales director and or marketing director on the board, then I'm guessing if you were to restructure this whole idea, is that the answer would be yes. I think if there is no sales or marketing person actually on the senior management team, then maybe if this is very evidence driven, and I've talked a lot here about data capture and information capture and getting intelligence, I think that probably is the big stepping stone for getting this person, if there is a business growth manager or business growth director, getting them on the board by making it very evidence driven. I mean, that thing I was just talking about there, about this collaborative measurement and celebrating the success. If you have one dashboard for how well you're doing, and you've got all this data kind of flowing in, and you can kind of prioritize that data, I'd say then this person, whoever is the lead of the business growth team, they have an opportunity here to really sell the value in. And let's face it, what team of directors, what management team would not want business growth on their agenda every single meeting? Of course they would. So let's assume, therefore, that a business growth director who's going to sponsor that and make that happen, well, of course, that would be an attractive proposition too. So I think the answer probably is potentially yes. A business growth director on the board is a great aim to have. But I think if you can make sure that there is always evidence, there's always data, and you're very, very mindful over the way that you measure everybody going through this sales pipeline, so you've got data at every step and you are continuously improving, then whoever that person is who's going to step up and say, yep, it's me, I want it to be me, I want to be on the board, then they're well armed. And I think if they can fuel those conversations, then I see no reason that either from an originally marketing perspective or an originally sales perspective, that person couldn't become a business growth director. Yeah, so the lead of the team, whichever angle they've come from originally, yeah, why not? Yeah, is the question. Why wouldn't they be? I think there's a huge value to the business. So lovely question. Yeah, I really like that question. And the third and final question, which I can't answer all the questions today, but we can, as I said earlier, we can connect on social at Neil Wilkins X if you do have any follow-up questions. But the third question that I'm going to cover here is, we are sales driven, so how can marketing make a difference? Well, that's really interesting. And I guess it kind of ties in with the previous sort of two answers that I've given here, is that if you are a marketer, but you know you're in a sales-driven organization where, you know, the whole conversation every day or every week or every month is about sales targets and it's about getting the next deal, then it is going to be an uphill battle. I'm not here naively saying that, oh yeah, marketing can just step in and everything then is business growth team. I mean, if it works really well being sales driven, and there are a lot of very successful sales driven organizations on the planet, you know, there's lots of different other orientations for business, but sales driven works in some sectors and in some styles of business. If that is the culture, then I think the only way really that a marketer can influence this is by the data and the evidence. If you can show where those quick wins balanced with long-term value is going to come from, but make it very data and evidence driven, then you stand a chance of influencing. But don't naively jump straight in and say, hey, I listened to this webinar with Neil and it's going to be super easy. I don't think in your instance it probably is going to be easy, and particularly if there is a culture that isn't necessarily used to it. I'm not saying they won't be receptive to it, but if they're not used to it right here, right now, then that might take just a little bit more time than you might normally do. But I think give it a go, have those initial conversations, and even if the culture doesn't necessarily support being a business growth team, then there's still an opportunity for that. So yeah, I would say, you know, give it a go. And I really, really appreciate those three questions, because, you know, cold calling and lead generation is a topic that often strikes fear into people if they're not of that kind of mindset, or they're not that way inclined. But hopefully I've shared some ideas and some tips as to how you can kind of move away from that cold selling into a much more warm calling and much more relationship focused way of talking to and with your customers. So I wish you every success in taking this on. And as I said, engage with me on social at Neil Wilkins X, because I'd love to hear how it goes for you.